Hey friends, what's up? Excuse me. Hey friends, what's up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Yud Ches, Daf Chai, Daf 18 of Masechta Sukkah. Daf Yud Ches, the first part of the Daf continues with the discussion about how much Schach, pasul, makes the Sukkah pasul for Tvachim, for Amis. We then have a discussion regarding lavud, and then a machlokas between Abaye and Rava regarding tikra, yored, v'sosem, chever, another Eruvin sugya, hilchus mechitza, of course, that we remember from Masechta Eruvin achsadra bebika, machlokas Rav and Shmuel, about do we say tikra, yored, v'sosem, chever. That is a very high level overview of what's in store for us. Let us get started. Okay, we're going to start in Daf Yud Zayin and base 3 lines to the bottom. Tashma, come and hear Sikcha b'nesarin shel erez. If you use for your schach planks of cedar, sheish boin dalid, that are 4 tfachim wide, divrei hakol psula. Everyone agrees that that is going to be a problem. Okay, because of Gzeres Tikra. Fine. In Boyan Dalid, but if they're less than 4 Tfachim, so Reb Meir pasul, Reb Yehuda machshir. So it's the machlokas Reb Meir and Reb Yehuda. Reb Yehuda says between 3 and 4 Tfachim wide is kosher, and Reb Meir says it's pasul because already we say Gzeres Tikra, as we learned a few days ago. Okay. Umode Reb Meir. Now Reb Meir admits, however, so even Reb Meir, who is more machmer over here, and says that between 3 and 4 tfachim, pashit, the plank is pasul, is it's not going to pasul the sukkah, but the plank itself is pasul. So even Reb Meir admits shem yesh bein neser leneser kum lo neser, that if between each board, now the important thing to note here, Chavra, and this is the key, the important thing to note here is that Reb Meir isn't just talking right now about between 3 tfachim and 4 tfachim. He's saying even 4 tfachim. That's the chiddush. Meaning, this brisa had said that everyone agrees that when a plank is 4 tfachim wide, it's pasul schach. There's a machlokus between Rabbi Yehuda and Reb Meir regarding between 3 and 4 tfachim. Now says the brisa umod Reb Meir. Now the Reb Meir admits in all of these cases, both between 3 and 4 and when it's even 4 tfachim, he admits shem yesh bein neser leneser kum lo neser, that if you have one plank and then you have space the same width of the plank and then another plank, etc., right? So you have a 4 tefach plank and then 4 tefachim of schach, 4 tefach plank, 4 tefachim of kosher schach, etc. Shemaniach psal b'neim uchshera. As long as you fill up the gaps with kosher schach, it is now a kosher sukkah. So now, Bishlam l'man da'amr bein be'emtza bein min hatzad b'dalet amis. So now I understand if we say that, like the man da'amr, that schach pasul, whether from the sides, whether in the middle of the sukkah, no difference, it's going to be 4 amis. So then I can understand this. The Reb Meir is saying that a plank that's 4 tfachim wide, Rabbi Yehuda also admits, right, but the chiddush is more according to Reb Meir, who's more stringent when it comes to between 3 and 4, whatever it is. But we're saying that a plank that's 4 tfachim wide is pasul schach. The question is it going to make the sukkah pasul? So now, if we say that, well, how much pasul schach does it take to make a pasul sukkah? So if we say, well, that's 4 amis worth. Well, in this case, I get it. We don't have 4 amis of this pasul schach. You have one plank of pasul schach, but right next to it is kosher schach. And then pasul schach, then kosher schach. So you never have 4 amis in a row of pasul schach. You have one plank at a time of pasul schach. So again, so b'shlam l'man da'amr bein be'emtzim bein ben hatzad b'dalet amis. I understand according to the man da'amr who says that in order for a sukkah to be pasul because of pasul schach, it's going to be 4 amis, whether in the middle of the sukkah, whether on the sides of the sukkah. Mishumachik shera. That is why this sukkah, Reb Meir says that the sukkah is kshera if you have pasul schach, kosher schach, pasul schach, kosher schach, because you never have 4 amis of pasul schach in one space, because you're dividing it up with kosher schach. El mando omar be'emtza be'arba'a, but if you say that in the middle of the sukkah there's a maximum permitted amount of 4 tfachim of pasul schach, well then, amai kshera. Why does putting kosher schach next to it fix anything? The fact of the matter is, the plank is 4 tfachim, it's pasul schach, and 4 tfachim of pasul schach will invalidate the entire sukkah. Why does putting kosher schach next to it and then alternating between kosher schach and pasul schach, why will that help? Each plank is enough to pasul the entire sukkah if you say that the sukkah is pasul in the middle of the sukkah with 4 tfachim. Cheva, you hear the kasha. Rav Huna Breder of Yeshua. So answers Rav Huna Breder of Yeshua. Hachu b'sukkah delo havya ela shmonim mitzumtzamos askinon. Here we are talking about a sukkah that is 8 amis wide. V'yav neser ufsal, v'neser ufsal, v'neser ufsal mehai gisa, v'neser ufsal, v'neser ufsal, v'neser ufsal mehai gisa, ta'avlu shnei psalin be'emtza v'ika hechsher sukkah be'emtza. Wow. It's been kind of coming up recently, so let's tackle this. So the answer is, you can still say that 4 tfachim of schach pasul in the middle of the sukkah makes the sukkah pasul. Okay, fine. So then how do we understand Reb Meir over here? Because Reb Meir is saying that even in a situation where you have a plank that's 4 tfachim wide, which we're saying everybody admits is pasul, and yet as long as you put kosher schach next to it, now you have a kosher sukkah. But what do you mean? That plank is going to make the sukkah pasul. It's 4 tfachim wide. We're saying that 4 tfachim in the middle of the sukkah pasul is the sukkah. So it says Rav Huna Breder of Yeshua, we're talking about a sukkah that's 8 amas wide. Now 8 amas, right? 1 amma is 6 tfachim. 8 amas is 48 tfachim. Divide that in 2, 24 tfachim. Givaldi. So now, if you take a 4 tefach plank and put next to it 4 tfachim of schach kosher, and then do the same thing, right? Neser ufsal, neser ufsal, neser ufsal, plank kosher schach, plank kosher schach, plank kosher schach. So lemaise, right? If we're talking about each one being 4 tfachim, so each neser ufsal, plank plus kosher schach, right? 4 tefach wide plank, 4 tfachim of kosher schach, that's 8 tfachim. Do this another 2 times, that's 24 tfachim. Now, the last 4 tfachim over there, right? We're saying plank schach, plank schach, plank schach, which means that the last 4 tfachim there is schach kosher. Now you do the same thing from the other side as well. And the last 4 tfachim there is going to be schach kosher, which means in the middle, you have 8 tfachim of schach kosher, right? You have 8 tfachim in the middle of schach kosher, which is more than Rosh Ruba of Shulchan, which is 7 tfachim. This is 8 tfachim. And all of the other plank schach, until then we'll say dofen akuma, so that doesn't matter. And in the middle, you have this 8 tfachim of schach kosher, so that's taka kosher sukkah. You hear that? So Reb Meir is saying, he admits that when you, even in a situation where you have a 4 tefach wide plank, which is pasul, and if it was, in the middle of the sukkah, it would invalidate the sukkah. But this is talking about specifically a case where it's an 8 amma wide sukkah. 8 amas is 48 tfachim, which if you divide into is 24 tfachim, and you view it coming from each of the 2 sides, and you say plank schach, plank schach, plank schach, which means that in the middle you have 8 tfachim of kosher schach, and all of the other plank schach stuff which is invalid, it's coming from the side, which we could say dofen akuma, so it's just considered part of the wall. It's smack in the middle, you have enough for a kosher sukkah, and that is going to work, and that is what Reb Meir is talking about when he says that he admits that if you have plank schach, then it is going to work. Okay, so we could still say that 4 tvachim in the middle of the sukkah does invalidate the sukkah. And Reb Meir, he's talking about a specific case where it's an 8 amma wide sukkah. Alright, sounds good to me. Let's move on. Amar Abai says, Abai, Ovir Shlosha b'sukkah gedola. Okay, so if you have a big sukkah, and in the middle of the sukkah there's 3 tvachim of space, so obviously that's going to be a problem because you can no longer say lavud. Umiato, but now you make it smaller, you fill it in. Bein bekonim, bein b'shvuden, have a miut. So whether you fill it in with kosher schach, whether you fill it in with pasul schach, it's going to be okay, because you don't have anything pasul anymore, right? Meaning when you have 3 tvachim of space, so that's a problem. But if you now minimize that space by putting in some pasul schach even, well, now you have less than 3 tvachim of space, so that's not a problem. You have less than 4 tvachim of pasul schach, that's also not a problem. So, or even if you say it's 4 amos, you definitely have less than 4 amos, right? You don't have a share of space, you don't have a share of schach pasul. So it's okay. B'sukkah ketana, however, if we're talking about a small sukkah, well then bikonim have a miut, if you fill in, so let's say it's a sukkah that's, mamish just 7 tvachim by 7 tvachim, and you have 4 tvachim of kosher schach, and then you have 3 tvachim of space, so that's a problem. So now we're saying, right, b'sukkah ketana, in a small sukkah, bikonim have a miut, if you fill in at least some of the space with kosher schach, well then, great. Now you have less than 3 tvachim of space. You have more than 4 tvachim of kosher schach. We'll say lavud. And now you have a 7 tvachim of schach. At least halachically. Bishvuden lo have a miut. Now, but if you fill it in with pasul schach, then it's not going to work. Because in this case, all you have is 4 tvachim of kosher schach. And then you have 3 tvachim of without kosher schach, and therefore you're not going to have 7 tvachim of schach, which is the minimum. So therefore you don't have a kosher sukkah. Okay, fine. V'ani milim min hatzad, aval be'emtza pligi ba ravacha v'ravina. When we say lavud, right, when we say that if there's less than 3 tvachim of space, so we could say lavud, that's specifically at the side of the sukkah, right? So if like right next to the wall you have less than 3 tvachim of space and then your schach starts, we could say lavud, no problem. But if in the middle of the schach there's 3 tvachim of space, so now already we get to machlokas. I'm sorry, if in the middle of the schach there's less than 3 tvachim of space, so do we say lavud? So it's taka machlokas. So again, from the side of the schach, right next to the wall, everyone agrees, yeah, if it's less than 3 tvachim of space, we say lavud. In the middle of the schach, if there's less than 3 tvachim of space, so now, lemais it's a machlokas. Plige ba revacha v'ravina. It's taka machlokas revacha and ravina. Chad omar yesh lavud be'emtza. So one man omar is lavud just as much in the middle as it is by the side. V'chad omar ein lavud be'emtza. Whereas the other man, the Amr, is that we do not say lavud in the middle. Lavud is a side thing. There's no lavud in the middle. Even if it's less than 3 tvachim in the middle, we cannot say lavud. My time in the man, the Amr, yesh lavud be'emtza. The man, the Amr, who says that we do say lavud in the middle of the schach. How come? The Tanya is, we learn in the Brisa, korya yotza mikosel zev and enogas b'kosel acher. If you have a mavui, okay, we all know the mavui is Baruch Hashem. We've been learning Daf Yomi for a while. We learn Masechta Eruvin. Mavui, of course, is right. You have they would have different houses. The houses would open into courtyards. Different courtyards would open up into a shared alleyway. That alleyway is called a mavui. You're not allowed to carry in that alleyway midir abonon unless you put up a do a shitufei mavos and you put up a lechi, which is a vertical pole, or a korah, which is a horizontal pole. Now, so what if that horizontal pole that goes from one wall to the other in the mavui doesn't quite reach the other wall? V'chein shtei koros achas yotza mikotzel zeh v'achas yotza mikotzel zeh. No, mikotzel acher. V'enenoga zo bazo. And similarly, what if you have one? What if the korah is actually 2 horizontal poles or whatever. One's coming out of the wall from the right, the other one's coming out of the left wall, and they don't quite meet in the middle. Pachis mishlosha eino tzarich lavi kora acheres. If there is less than 3 tvachim of space, whether we're talking about the bar that comes from one wall and doesn't quite reach the other wall, or whether we're talking about the 2 bars coming out of the walls and they don't quite meet in the middle. In either case, if there's less than 3 tvachim of space, then we'll say lavud. You don't have to bring another beam to make the connection. If there's 3 or more tvachim of space, so then we can no longer say lavud, and you have to make the connection. So we see that when it comes to mavui with the korah, so we say lavud, whether the space is on the side next to the wall or whether the space is in the middle, we say lavud, and therefore we want to say, right, and then therefore one of the manda amars is going to say that just like by mavui we could say lavud in the middle, so also by sukkah we could say lavud in the middle. The idach, the manda amar who argues and says that we do not say lavud in the middle by sukkah, shiny koras derabanan, that a mavui is only a din derabanan. Midoraisa, the mavui is a rishus hayachid, you can carry darin. It's midirabanan, we say don't carry that because we're nervous you might end up carrying in from rishus hayachid to rishus harabim, which is of course a problem. Now, or was the shaila that if I can carry in the, I feel like this came up the other day and I couldn't remember exactly what the problem is. The problem that we're concerned that you might carry from the mavui, which is a rishus hayachid, into the rishus harabim? Is that the shaila, or is the shaila that I think this may have been the concern, that if you can carry in the mavui, which is a shared space, so then I might say, well, what's the difference if I carry in the mavui, if I carry in rishus harabim? If I can carry here, why can't I carry there? And you might end up carrying dalet amos b'rishus harabim. Or was it taka machlokas? Can't remember anymore. But certainly, midoraisa the mavui is rishus hayachid, and you can carry there. But midorabanan we say don't carry in the mavui, and therefore the manda amar who says that 3 tvachim of space in the middle of the schach is pasul. I'm sorry, everyone says that. But if there's less than 3 tvachim of space in the middle of a schach, we do not say lavud. What about the fact that by mavui we say lavud even in the middle? Mavui is derabanan, sukkah is d'oraisa. That's how I'll answer it. V'idach, okay, I just did that. My taima demanda amar ein lavud be'emtza. So now what's the rationale for the manda amar who says that we do not say lavud in the middle of the schach of the sukkah? The Tanan, as we talk learn in a Mishnah regarding tuma, oilais, oil tuma, a tent for tuma. Aruba shebebayis, if you have a sunroof, is that what it's called? A sunroof? Skylight I think is a better word. So if you have a skylight in your house, okay, a window in the roof, okay, uva poseach tefach, and the window in the roof is a tefach wide. Tuma bebayis, so now if there is tuma in the house, kulo tame, everything in the house is going to be tame. Masha keneged aruba tower. However, that which is underneath the window, the skylight, is going to be tar because it's not under the oil; it's just under the sky. I mean, if it's an open window, tuma keneged aruba. If the tuma, i.e. the mace, or even just a kazayis, mibsara mace, if it is opposite the skylight, kol habayis kulo tahor. The entire house is tahor because the tuma it's not covered. It just goes right up to the sky. And it doesn't make the house tahor because there's an open window opposite it. It doesn't make the house tameh because there's an open window opposite it. Fine. Ein baruba poseach tefach. Now this is going to be the same halach as Rashi points out in for all intents and purposes right over here. It's the same exact thing. There are nafkaminas in the Mishnah and Olos, but they're not relevant. They're not quoted here. But anyways, it's going to be the same thing, which is if the skylight is less than a tefach, it's the same halacha. Tuma bebayis, if there is kazayis mibasar mace in the house, kineged aruba tahor, that which is opposite the skylight is going to remain tahor, but the rest of the house is going to be tameh. Tuma kineged aruba, if the kazayis mibasar mace is opposite the skylight, well then kol habayis kulo tahor, then everything in the house is tahor because the tuma is not covered by an oil. Fine. So what do we see? So we see that we don't say lavud l'maaseh. in the middle, right? We're saying that there's a skylight in the middle of the roof. It's, the larger shear that we talked about over here is a tefach, which is obviously less than 3 tefachim. And we're not saying that it's though the roof is sealed. So what do we see? We see that a less than 3 tefachim of space in the middle of the roof, we do not say lavud. So that is the proof for the man d'amar who wants to say that by, less than 3 tefachim of space in the middle of the schach, we would not say lavud. Just like by hilchos olos, we don't say lavud in the middle of the roof. You hear that? V'idach, whereas the man d'amar who says that we do say lavud by sukkah, by schach, would argue and say, shiny hilchos tuma dachi gmir lehu. That hilchos tuma are an anderazach. Hilchos Tumah are their own thing. Don't bring me shilas from Hilchos Tumah because that's all halacha l'Moshe Misinai. And the halacha l'Moshe Misinai applies to what it applies to. You can't apply it to other things. So by Hilchos Tumah, there's halacha l'Moshe Misinai that we're not going to say lavud for that space in the roof. But that doesn't apply to Sukkah. Sukkah will say lavud. Givaldig. Dash Rabbi Yehuda bar Ilai. Givaldig. Rabbi Yehuda bar Ilai. Rabbi Yehuda bar Ilai is Rabbi Yehuda. So he darshaned by shenifchas v'sikich al gabav ksher. Okay, fine. We have this house, the roof caved in, put on schach, kosher. Amar the son of Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi, gevaldig. So Rabbi Shmuel, the son of Rabbi Yossi, said to Rabbi Yehuda, gevaldig, right? Rabbi Shmuel, the son of Rabbi Yossi was a contemporary of Rabbi Yehuda. And I guess maybe Rabbi Yossi had already passed away, and now Rabbi Shmuel, his son, was in front of Rabbi Yehuda. And he says, Rabbi Parish, Rabbi Yehuda, explain what you mean. And then he says what his father said. Kach perish Abba, this is what my father Rabbi Yossi said. Abba amas psula pachos me abba amas ksher. That like we've been saying, that when we say that if you have a house that the roof caved in and you put schach in the hole, so we say it's a kosher sukkah if the surrounding roof is less than 4 amas, because we'll say dofen akuma. If it's 4 amas, we can't say dofen akuma. Givaldig, like we've been saying. Tarish Rabbi Yehuda bar Ilai, again, says Rabbi Yehuda bar Ilai, avroma, some kind of small fish, sharia, you're allowed to eat it. Okay, we're not concerned that there's like, in the little fish, there are little bugs, we're not concerned about that, you're allowed to eat it. Amr lefan of Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Parish. So now Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi again says to Rabbi Yehuda bar Ilai, he says, nu explain. And then he says, Kachamar Abba, this is what my father said. Shemakom ploni asura, shemakom ploni muteres. That it taka depends. In such and such a place, the fish is osur, because we have to be concerned about small little buggies. And if it's from a different place, so then it's taka allowed, because we don't have to be worried about little buggies. Ki it's like Rabbi Abai said, hay tzachanta, some kind of small fish, di bavnaire, from this place of bavnaire, sharia, it's permitted to eat this small fish. My time outcome. Ilim mishum deredife maya by dog tome came delays lechut ashedre lemotzi koim. And if you're going to say because bavnaire is a very strong current, and therefore these little tame fishies won't be able to, right? They don't have a spine, and therefore they won't be able to be machzik ma'amad. They won't be able to kind of stand up to the current, and they won't be able to thrive in bavnaira, and therefore you can assume that none of these small little fishies are going to get into your tzachanta. But we do see that lemaisa, these small little fishies are, or little buggies are in bavnaira. Okay. Ela mishum demliche maya by dog tome came de leisle kilpe lo matzikoi. Okay. Or maybe you're going to say, okay, so again, so ela mishum demliche maya. So maybe you'll say that, well, maybe the waters of bavnaira are very salty, and then I guess whatever these shkatzim were, it's unclear to me actually if we're talking about bugs or we're talking about small fish, because now we're saying, I don't know, we seem to be talking about small fish, right? V'hai dog tame came to leis lechut hashedra, for example, but I thought we were talking about shratzim. I don't know. It's a little bit unclear over here, but it's also a little bit technical. But okay, elam shum demliche maya. By dog tame, and this dog tame that we're talking about that will cause problems came to leis le kilfe lo matzikoi. Well, since it doesn't have scales, it won't be able to survive in salt water. Veha kachazinon dekai, but we see that these small fish are, without scales, are able to exist in salt water. Okay, rather it's because the mud of Bavnaira isn't good for these small little tame fish, and therefore they don't thrive there, and that's why the tzachanta fish, we don't have to be concerned that there's these other like small fish inside of them that are going to cause problems. Says Ravina, but nowadays that nar eson and nar gamda kind of mixed together with Bavnaira, and they have these problematic fish, so whatever, don't eat tzachanta from Bavnaira. Let's go weiter, Chevra. Itmar, it was stated, Sikech agabe achsadra sheyesh la ptsimin ksher she'en la ptsimin abai omer ksher rava omer psula. Ooh, wah, wah. Okay. Tikra, yored, v'sosem. Who can tell me what that is? Tikra, yored, v'sosem means that we view it as though the edge of the roof magically creates a wall. That we view it as though the edge of the roof has a wall coming down from it, straight down to the ground, and the space inside is enclosed. Now, going back to our example in the Mishnah, that you have the chutzner is surrounded by these porches. The porches have roofs on them. Gewaldig. So we said, if the roof of the porch is less than 4 amis, we could say dofen akuma. Okay? What if it's 4 amis or more? We can no longer say dofen akuma. Okay, so now the schach that you put up in the middle of the chutzner isn't going to do anything, because where's the walls of the sukkah? The wall, right? The porches are more than 4 amis. We can't say dofen akuma to say that the walls of the houses are bending, so we don't have any walls over here. So now, so says the Gemara, Itmar sikech agabe achsadra sheish la ptsimin ksher. So everyone says that if the achsadra, if these porches have walls, essentially, right? Meaning if the porches at where they, meaning you're in your house, there's a wall of your house, obviously, you go through your front door, you're now on the porch. If at the other side of the porch, basically where you would exit to go to the chutzner, there's like pegs within 3 tefachim of each other, which we'll say lavud, and it basically creates a solid wall as far as we're concerned. Well, that's what these psimin are, and everyone agrees, well, if there's a wall separating between your porch and the chutzner, well then obviously the sukkah has walls, right? So everyone agrees that if you have like these pegs that are less than 3 tefachim away from each other, that's halachically considered a wall, and then, you have proper walls, and there's no problem there. She'ein lo ptsimin, but what if there aren't these pegs? Meaning, what if there is no wall separating between the porch and the chutzner? Abai amar ksher, Rav amar psula. So Abai says, nonetheless, the sukkah is a kosher sukkah, even if the roof of the porch is more than 4 amas. Rav amar psula. Rav says, no, pasul sukkah. Abai amar ksher, I mean, tikra, yored, v'sosem. Abai says that the sukkah is taka kosher because we'll say that the edge of the roof of the porch, patio porch, the edge of the roof, magically, there's a wall coming down from it. So then it's as though the sukkah is surrounded by walls, by imaginary walls. Rav Amar psula lo aminu tikra, yored, v'sosem. Rav says, no, this sukkah is pasul, there's no walls. We don't say that the edge of the roof just goes straight down to create a wall. We don't say that, this imaginary wall. Omer le Rava le Abai. Now Rava says to Abai, Ledidach dama pitikra, yored, v'sosem. According to you that you say pitikra, yored, v'sosem. Afilu hivchis dofen emtzoi. What if you have a sukkah and you have 3 walls, and then the middle wall, meaning you have like a chet, and the middle wall collapses? Would you say, Abai, that it's a kosher sukkah because we'd say pitikra, yored, v'sosem? Would you say, Abai, that wall that collapsed, we'll just say no problem? There's an imaginary wall coming from the schach all the way down to the ground. Amar lei modina loch be'ahi tavle k'mavei mafulosh. So Abai says, no, I would admit to you that in that case, where you only have 2 walls now, we won't say that the 3rd wall is pitikra, yored, v'sosem, because that would be like a mavoi amafulosh, like an open mavoi, which doesn't work. You'd have to create like a Tzuras Pesach or something like that in order for it to work. Okay. So let's say that the machlokes is between Abaye, who is saying pitikra, yored, v'sosem, And Rav, who says that we don't say pitikra yored v'sosim, is like the machlokas between Rav and Shmuel. The Itmar, as it was stated, achsadra bebika, if in the middle of like an open outdoor space, like mamish an open outdoor space, middle of nowhere, there's an achsadra, which is basically, I don't know, let's call it like 4 poles with some roof on top of it. So, Rav Amar mutar l'taltel b'chulo, da'amina pitikra yored v'sosim. Rav says, no problem. Under this portico, under this achsadra, you can carry. Gesundheit. We'll say pitikra yored v'sosim. We'll say that the edges of the roof, there's a wall, an imaginary wall coming straight down from the edges of the roof. This achsadra is enclosed entirely. Carry to your heart's delight inside of the achsadra. That's Rav's opinion. Ta'amina pitikra yored v'sosim, because we say that the edges of the roof create walls around the space. U'Shmuel Omar ein metaltel bo'el b'dalet amas d'lo amina pitikra yored v'sosim. Shmuel says that we cannot carry in this achsadra because we don't say pitikra yored v'sosim, and therefore it's considered rishus harabim, and you can't carry more than 4 amas. Fine. Now, clearly, according to Shmuel, it's clear that, in this breakdown, Rava, who says that we don't say pitikra yored v'sosim, would hold like Shmuel. Abaye, who says that we do say pitikra yored v'sosim, cannot hold like Shmuel. So clearly, Shmuel is in Rava's camp. Abaye, who says pitikra yored v'sosim, cannot argue that Shmuel agrees with him. Ki plige, however, where there's a machlokas, but however, where things become less clear, is aliba de Rav. According to Rav, who says that we do say pitikra yored v'sosim by achsadra bebika, so obviously Abaye, who says pitikra yored v'sosim by this chotzer that's surrounded by patios, he's going to say, well, Rav agrees with me, that clearly we say pitikra yored v'sosim, and we would say pitikra yored v'sosim also in the chotzer that's surrounded by the patios. However, Rava is going to try to argue that Rav, who says that we do say pitikra yored v'sosim in the case of achsadra bebika, would agree with him, Rava, that in the case of the chotzer that's surrounded by patios, we would not say pitikra yored v'sosim. Ki pliga aliba de Rava. Abaye and Rava argue regarding the opinion of Rav, who says that we say pitikra yored v'sosim by achsadra bebika. Abaye Rav, okay, Abaye obviously is going to say, well, Rav says pitikra yored v'sosim, I say pitikra yored v'sosim. V'Rava amalach, and Rav is going to say to you, ad kan lo amar Rav hasam, Rav says by achsadra bebika pitikra yored v'sosim, el d'mechitzos la'achsadra hu da'avide, because when it comes to achsadra bebika, you're saying pitikra yored v'sosim to permit the space inside of the achsadra, right? By achsadra bebika, you're saying pitikra yored v'sosim that it encloses the achsadra, and now you can carry inside the achsadra, that you're enclosing the space that you want to use. So in that case, Rav would say pitikra yored v'sosim. Aval hacha, but over here we're saying pitikra yored v'sosim in the chotzer with the patio surrounding it. What is the pitikra that we're saying goes down? The roof of the patio. We're saying, or of the porch, the roof is going down to create a wall. And what's it enclosing? Be'etzem, this imaginary wall that we want to argue is coming down from the edge of the porch roof. So essentially that wall is going to be for the porch, right? It's enclosing the porch. And yet, we're saying that the wall itself is being used as a wall for the chotzer, to say that the sukkah that we're constructing in the chotzer now has walls. So we're basically saying pitikra yored v'sosim, not to enclose, right, to enclose the porch, but now we're using this wall that's enclosing the porch as now a wall for something else, for the sukkah that we want to construct in the chotzer. It's kind of similar to like the havamina that we entertained the other day about dofen akuma, right? That maybe we would say that we could say dofen akuma, right, for the wall of the house to go inside the house, but not necessarily to go outside to work for the sukkah, right? So we're saying the same thing over here, that Rava's arguing that when Rav says pitikra yored v'sosim, that's only in achsadra bebika, where you want to use the walls that you're imaginarily making to enclose the space that you want to use, right? The walls are for the achsadra, and you want to be using the space inside the achsadra. So there, Rav would say pitikra yored v'sosim, but Rav would argue that when it comes to sukkah, where we're constructing a sukkah in the middle of the chatzer, and in order to say that the sukkah is kosher, we have to say pitikra yored v'sosim. Now, that wall coming down from the roof of the porch, that wall is enclosing the porch. It's coming from the roof of the porch to enclose the porch, and yet we're saying now we want to chop this wall, this imaginary wall, to now also serve our sukkah that we're building in the chutzner. You can't necessarily chap arayin for the sukkah that you're building in the chutzner. For the porch, fine, but not for something external outside of the space that we're enclosing with this imaginary wall. But over here, by the porch, where we'll say pitikra yored v'sosem to enclose the porch, but it's not meant to be a wall for the sukkah, lo, you would not say pitikra yored, right? Rav would argue that Rav would no longer say pitikra yored v'sosem in this case. Tanan, we learn in our Mishnah, it's going to be a kasha on Abaye, we learn in our Mishnah, v'chein chotzer mukefes achsadra, we said that if you have a chotzer that's surrounded by these porches, so we say that you could put schach in the middle, and as long as the porches, the roof on the porch is less than 4 amas, we could say dofen akuma, and it's a kosher sukkah. But if it's more than 4 amas, we can no longer say dofen akuma, and therefore it's a pasul sukkah. Ve'amai, name pitikra yored v'sosem. But Abaye, why is this now a pasul sukkah? If the roof of the porch is more than 4 amas, why is the sukkah pasul? What about pitikra yored v'sosem? It's a kasha on Abaye. Tirgima Rava alibad Abaye. Chavi, you hear this? Even though Rava disagrees with Abaye and says that we don't say pitikra yored v'sosem, Rava still answers for Abaye and defends his chavrusa, I don't know chavrusa, but sort of contemporary Abaye, and says, look, even though I disagree with Abaye, this is how you can still answer for Abaye, which is kisheshva es keruyo. It's talking about where the schach was on the same level as the roof. So meaning when we say pitikra yored v'sosem, for example, achsadra bebika, let's take as an example. So you basically have this roof on top of the 4 poles. You could see where the roof ends. It's clear where the roof ends, and that point where the roof ends will draw a line down to say that there's an imaginary wall. But Rava answers for Abaye that our Mishnah is talking about where the schach is level with the roofs of the porches, in which case there's no clear point where the porch ends, and we will draw that line down. And for that reason, we do not say pitikra yored v'sosem, but theoretically, says Rava, Abaye would be able to answer that we would say pitikra yored v'sosem if the schach was kind of on top of the roof. But says Rava, you could say that the Mishnah is talking about where the schach is level with the roof, in which case there's no sort of like edge of the roof to draw the line down from, because it's just smooth and flat. Alright, that was Daf Yud Ches of Masechta Sukkah. So, what did we discuss? The first part of the Daf, we continue with our discussion about how much schach pasul makes the Sukkah pasul. Is it 4 tvachim or is it 4 amas? We tried to ask a kasha on the man who says 4 tvachim, but we didn't necessarily succeed. So, it's a machlokas. Is it 4 tvachim or is it 4 amas? Then we discussed lavud, when it comes to the sukkah. When you have lavud, when you have less than 3 tvachim of space in the middle of the schach, can you say lavud? Meaning, definitely if there's less than 3 tvachim of space by the side of the schach, by the wall, we'll say lavud. But what about if it's in the middle of the sukkah? We had a machlokas there between, who is it, Ravina and, Ravina and Ravacha. So one man the Omer is that we do not say lavud in the middle of the schach, and the other man the Omer is that we do say lavud also in the middle of the schach. And then we got into the shaila about pitikra yored v'sosem, which is super interesting, right? So in the case of when you have this chotzer that's surrounded by porches, so can we say that even if the porches, the roofs are more than 4 amas, we say no problem, we'll say pitikra yored v'sosem, that the roof kind of goes down. Abaye says yes, we do say that. Rava says that we do not say that. What about a Mishnah that says that if it's 4 amas, it's pasul? So Rava explained according to Abaye, you could say it's talking about where the roof is kind of flat, so there's no clear edge to draw the line down from. But in general, Abaye would argue that we would say tikra yored v'sosim, that the edge of the roof you can draw a line straight down. Rava says you cannot say tikra yored v'sosim, and of course we connected that with the machlokas between, or tried to connect it with the machlokas between Rav and Shmuel from Masechta Eruvin, where we say achsadra bebika, that when you have 4 poles with a roof on top in the middle of nowhere, Rav says that you can carry in there. Shmuel says that you cannot, because Rav says tikra yored v'sosim, Shmuel does not. Cheve, that was Daf Yud Ches. I hope you enjoyed very much. Have a great day. Cheers.